You know that highly specific feeling when you are sitting on a crowded subway train?
Oh, yeah,
Or,
definitely.
I mean, maybe you are just waiting in line at the DMV and you look around at all the wildly different people surrounding you.
Is a completely universal observation.
Right, like you see someone radiating pure, unbothered peace while reading a book, and right next to them is someone loudly arguing into their phone, just radiating absolute chaos. And you think to yourself, there's just no way we all belong to the exact same species.
Well, the sheer bandwidth of human behavior is staggering. I mean, we are trained by modern psychology and sociology to look for earthly, measurable explanations for these differences. We talk about genetics
Hmm.
or early childhood upbringing.
Socioeconomic environment, sure.
Exactly, or neurodivergence. We just assume that deep down we all share the same foundational human source code. And our differences are just variations in how that code was compiled.
But today, we are throwing that standard model completely out the window.
We really are.
Because we are jumping into an esoteric framework that suggests the person sitting across from you feels like an alien because, well, they literally are from a different dimension of existence. So, welcome to today's deep dive.
I am very excited for this one.
Today, we're exploring a profoundly fascinating text from 2007 by an author named Deiform Celestial. It was translated by Trans and edited by Kair. It is titled How to Know Our Previous Lives.
Which is a wildly ambitious premise.
It really is. It promises to decode your most random quirks, your diet, and even your career aspirations as the hidden footprints of your past incarnations. So our mission today is to unpack the author's 18 specific clues to uncover where you might have come from.
Right. And to understand the 36-dimensional space and figure out what all this means for our current lives. But it is important to lay the groundwork right away here.
Okay, let's hear it.
Whether you approach this text as profound spiritual truth or simply as a captivating psychological thought experiment, it offers a completely unique lens for categorizing human diversity.
Yeah, it strips away the idea that your deepest impulses are conscious choices. Instead, it argues they are ancient, lingering instincts.
Precisely. And to understand how that works, we have to look at the author's foundational concept, which is that the universe and our life force itself is holographic.
I want to make sure we really grasp what holographic means in this context, because it is not just a sci-fi buzzword here.
No, it's meant quite literally.
Right, like in a literal hologram. If you drop the glass plate and it shatters into 100 pieces, every single tiny shard still contains the entire complete image of the original picture.
And the author applies that exact physical property to the human soul. The argument is that your current present-day life information base contains the data from all generations of your previous life journeys. It is all in there.
Wow, all of it.
All of it. The information is hidden beneath the surface of your conscious mind, but it occasionally leaks out, revealing momentary clues through your seemingly random preferences and aversions.
It makes me think of like a computer's cache memory. Imagine you clear your browser history, you completely wipe your hard drive, and you upgrade your entire operating system.
That is the equivalent of reincarnating into a brand new human body, right?
Exactly. But somehow, deep in the architecture of the machine, fragments of your old search history still randomly pop up in your autocomplete. You are trying to type a mundane email, and suddenly a totally bizarre search term from 10 years ago fills in the blank.
That captures the mechanism perfectly. And the author's entire goal with this text is to teach the reader how to recognize those autocomplete moments, those momentarily revealed clues, so you can trace your own origins.
And this ties directly into why human nature appears so drastically varied on that subway car.
It does. The text proposes that there is only one true human nature. But the reason people are poles apart in their behavior is because of where they originated before arriving here.
Right, the author describes mankind as a rabble and calls the mortal world a tenement yard for all kinds of lives.
A tenement yard. Just a massive, chaotic apartment complex where entities from entirely different universes, what the text calls the 36-dimensional space, are suddenly forced to share the same physical space.
They have to use the same currency and abide by the same traffic laws. You have entities from the heaven world, the animal world, and standard mortal reincarnations all bumping elbows in the hallway.
Just consider the friction that naturally creates. I mean, if someone feels entirely alien to you, this text argues their baseline reality actually is fundamentally different from yours. They're operating on the physics of a different dimension.
Okay, so let's explore who exactly is living in this tenement yard, starting with the tenants who came down from the
The
penthouse.
celestial beings.
Yes, the celestial beings. The text gives us incredibly specific behavioral markers to figure out if you have divine origins, and it starts with how you process information. It claims that if you have holographic order thinking, you are a god from the side of the greatest creator. And if you have formless thinking, you were a Buddha from the Elysium world. Let's unpack those terms because they represent entirely different cognitive architectures.
So, holographic order thinking suggests an innate ability to see the vast interconnectedness of absolutely everything. You don't just see a tree, you see the soil, the ecosystem, the carbon cycle, the grand
You
design.
perceive the order in the chaos.
Exactly. Formless thinking, on the other hand, implies a mind that is completely free from rigid earthly attachments, concepts, or boundaries. It's a state of pure, detached observation, completely unbothered by human drama.
The text also points to our desires as clues. It says if you love freedom above all else, if you seek happiness, and if you naturally follow your heart's desire without overstepping the line, you are a celestial being.
Notice the phrasing there, following your heart's desire without overstepping the line.
Yeah, that stands out.
It describes a state of being where your natural, uninhibited desires are already perfectly aligned with universal harmony. You don't need laws or discipline to force yourself to be good. Your intrinsic nature simply does not cause harm.
Or another clue, the ability to change a world magically makes you a super celestial being.
Which is quite the leap from just seeking happiness.
Right. But, okay, this is where I have to push back a little on the author's logic, because some of these divine clues feel incredibly counterintuitive to how we usually value a well-lived human life.
How so?
Well, the text breaks down these celestial origins further into the 10,000-year world and the 1,000-year world. It claims that if you dream of flying freely, if you experience strange states of unexplainable joy, have zero fear of death, and you actively hate your life in the mortal world, you are from the highest realm, the 10,000-year world.
And a step down from that, the 1,000-year world, involves looking for the way home, yearning for a better future, and actively hating the fetters, the chains of state, religion, and family.
Right. Both of those describe a profound sense of alienation. But then the text defines the markers of a standard mortal human past life. It says if you possess Taiji thinking and are incredibly wise, you are a mortal sage.
Right.
And if you love your nation, you love your culture, you love your family, and you think all of those institutions are perfectly justified, you are just a regular mortal human.
The contrast is jarring if you look at it through the lens of modern social values.
It really is. It frames feeling disconnected, hating the world, and rejecting your family as a divine, highly evolved trait. Meanwhile, deeply loving human society and finding joy in your earthly community is just standard, baseline mortal baggage.
I get what you mean. It feels backwards.
Yeah, we usually tell people that finding connection and building a family is the highest human achievement.
Well, the framework presented here is a profound philosophical inversion of our standard earthly values. The author is suggesting a very specific scale of spiritual evolution, one that heavily favors detachment.
Detachment as the ultimate goal.
Exactly. In this cosmology, deep attachment to earthly institutions, your state, your family, your religion, is a symptom of a younger or more terrestrial soul. You love the tenement yard because it is the only home you have ever known. You think the building is the entire universe.
So the more you love the rules of the game here on Earth, the more likely it is you have always just been a player in this specific game.
Precisely. The advanced celestial souls are inherently untethered. Their apparent depression or homesickness isn't a psychological failing. It is a manifestation of their soul remembering a higher dimension of boundless freedom.
They hate the fetters of state and family because they remember an existence that didn't require those survival structures.
Exactly. And just briefly to clarify Taiji thinking for the mortal sage, that refers to a dualistic yin-yang approach to life, the ability to balance opposites, to understand nuance and compromise. It is incredibly wise, but it is fundamentally a tool for navigating the earthly plane, which is why it points to a mortal origin.
That reframes things completely. But of course, not everyone in the tenement yard relocated from the celestial penthouse.
Oh, definitely not.
Some of these souls wandered in from the wilderness. The text pivots sharply from divine alienation to incredibly primal, everyday behaviors. How do the survival instincts of the animal world manifest in a modern human life?
This is where the metaphysical concepts map onto the mundane details of our daily routines. It proposes that our societal behaviors are actually evolutionary carryovers from different species. For instance, if you dream of flying, but you're still very attached to the mortal world, you are a bird.
And it starts right at the dinner table, too. The text outlines what we can call the diet divide. It argues that if you derive genuine pleasure from eating meat, and you never feel a shred of guilt over the suffering of the slaughtered animal, you were a predatory carnivore in a past life.
Right.
But if you naturally gravitate toward a vegan or vegetarian diet, if you are generally timid, if you prefer to rely on large groups, and you heavily lean on the protection of family and religion, you are a docile herbivore.
The author is coupling dietary preference with social behavior in a very deliberate way. The carnivore past life isn't merely about consuming protein, it is about the psychological makeup of an apex predator. It is a detachment from the prey's suffering.
So it's not just a food choice.
No, it's a worldview.
Yeah.
Conversely, the herbivore past life connects a plant-based diet with prey instincts.
The need for the safety of the herd.
Exactly. Relying on groups, being timid, clinging to the protective structures of community. These aren't framed as moral choices. They are framed as the lingering anxieties of an entity that used to be hunted.
Here is where it gets absolutely fascinating to me. It is not just about what we eat or how we socialize. It completely dictates how we build our societies and choose our professions.
The career divide.
Yes, the text states that if you possess an inherent desire to be a police officer, if you are highly sensitive to theft and feel a deep drive to arrest criminals, you were a cat. But if your drive is to be a soldier, to defend your land and your home from outsiders, you were a dog or a wolf.
The behavioral translation here is strikingly specific.
It is like a role-playing game. It is as if your base animal stats, cat versus dog, completely lock in your human character's class of cop versus soldier.
That's a great analogy.
The barn cat's ancient instinct to hunt mice in the dark translates flawlessly into a police officer's desire to catch thieves in the city. The wolf's instinct to guard the pack's territory becomes the soldier's drive to patrol the nation's borders. It makes you wonder, are our complex, civilized societal roles really just animal instincts wearing suits and uniforms?
That is the exact implication. It strips away the romanticism we attach to our careers. It encourages you to look at your deepest professional drives and ask, is my career a conscious intellectual human choice? Or is it simply an ancient biological instinct finding the closest modern outlet?
And the text doesn't shy away from the darker side of those animal instincts either. It states that a natural inclination to embezzle, to sneak around and steal resources, points to being a mouse or a rodent in a past life.
Which fits the pattern perfectly.
But the one that really stopped me in my tracks was the description of the livestock world.
Yeah, that section definitely requires some careful unpacking.
It says that if your innate nature is to bear hardship without complaining, to endure bullying without ever resisting, and to completely passively abide by whatever destiny throws at you, you are a farm animal. You came from the livestock world.
When we encounter people in our lives who seem tragically incapable of standing up for themselves, who accept terrible, unjust treatment as their unavoidable fate, standard psychology might look for childhood trauma or learned helplessness.
We usually assume they are broken, or that someone broke them.
Exactly. But this text argues no, their soul is literally conditioned by lifetimes of being livestock. They are running the software of an entity that was selectively bred over millennia to be subjugated and consumed.
It is a heartbreaking way to view a person's suffering, but I also found it strangely empathetic. It explains that invisible wall that stops some people from fighting back.
Because it entirely removes judgment from the equation. If someone is operating on the deep-seated instincts of the livestock world, their passivity isn't a failure of human courage. It is simply the manifestation of their specific coordinate on the evolutionary map.
But speaking of terrible treatment, the tenement yard has some incredibly dark corners. We have looked at the heavenly virtues and the primal survival instincts. But how does this framework explain pure active malice? Where do the truly toxic actors in our lives come from?
The author categorizes these destructive entities into specific realms of the dark arts, focusing on entities whose fundamental nature is parasitical to others.
For example, it claims that if you are naturally aggressive, quick-thinking, good at sorcery, which is a fascinating skill to just throw in there,
Right.
and you actually derive pleasure from the pain of others, you are from the devil world.
Pure sadism equals a demonic origin.
Right. But the category that I think everyone listening will immediately recognize is the goblin.
Oh, the goblin archetype is incredibly vivid here.
The text says, If you have an extraordinary bearing and a charming style, if you are highly endearing, but underneath it all you are extremely selfish, you are a goblin. I have to laugh because, I mean, we all know this person, right?
Oh, for sure.
Think about that one coworker who constantly manipulates office politics with a smile, or that incredibly stylish but deeply narcissistic ex-partner. Standard therapy might call them toxic or say they have attachment issues. This text says, no, they are literally a goblin.
It sounds humorous on the surface, but this categorization provides a profoundly powerful coping mechanism for the reader. Think about how humans process betrayal. When someone acts with extreme selfishness or cruelty, our immediate instinct is to ask, how could another person do this to me?
Right, we expect better.
We operate with an expectation of a baseline human empathy. When that empathy is missing, it creates massive cognitive dissonance. We suffer primarily because we expect them to act like human.
Because they look human.
Exactly. But this text offers a radically different paradigm. By categorizing deeply selfish, charmingly manipulative people as goblins or sadistic people as devils, it allows us to view them not as broken humans failing at empathy.
But as entities acting perfectly and flawlessly according to their fundamental nature.
Precisely.
Wow. I mean, you don't get mad at a shark for acting like a shark. It is just doing shark things. So you shouldn't let it destroy your mental health when a goblin acts selfishly, because that is simply the source code of a goblin.
The text also mentions the evil spirit, defined as someone who is clever in trivial matters, masters little magic tricks or deceptions, and is always waiting in the wings for a chance to seize other people's love and property.
Again, it frames opportunism and petty jealousy as an origin from a darker dimension, completely separating it from the concept of a flawed human.
And it is worth noting the realms that do not typically enter this human mix.
Oh, right. I should mention, for clarity, that the text briefly outlines a few realms that do not interact with our tenement yard. It defines the inflamed layer and the frozen layer, which imply extremes of suffering or stagnation, as realms that usually don't enter human society.
It also notes that insects and many plants belong to separate life cycles entirely.
Which, frankly, is a relief. The subway car is crowded enough without having to worry if the guy aggressively pushing past me used to be a praying mantis.
The author is meticulous in building a complete cosmology. Every impulse, every aversion, every social dynamic is mapped back to a specific dimensional coordinate.
So if we pull all the way back and synthesize this, we have mapped out the entire apartment building, from the celestial beings detached from reality to the law-enforcing cats and territory-guarding wolves, all the way down to the charmingly toxic goblins in the basement.
It is quite the map.
What is the ultimate point of knowing all of this? What are we supposed to do with this information?
Well, the author provides very specific closing instructions. First, they stress that this requires deep observation. You must verify these clues repeatedly in yourself and others. And crucially, they note the universal law that like attracts like.
Meaning?
If you want to find the shadows of your own past, you just need to look at the people you associate with most closely.
Show me your friends and I will show you your past life dimension.
It is a mirror. But the most important piece of advice in the entire text is a strict warning against emotional reaction. The author explicitly states, do not be angry or overly excited about your past life.
Right.
Because no matter what you were in the past, whether you were a god surveying the universe, a mouse stealing grain, or a goblin manipulating a lover, the text reminds you, you are now a human.
You are now a human. That one sentence grounds this entire wild esoteric theory right back down to the pavement.
It demands humility. The purpose of this framework is not to build an ego trip about being a celestial being, nor is it to despair over having the instincts of a farm animal. The stated goal is simply to find your coordinate system and coordinate point.
When you can honestly plot where you started on the map, it becomes exponentially easier to understand the trajectory of your life's evolution.
Exactly.
And I love that the author includes a very practical disclaimer at the end. They essentially say, look, if you think this entire article is absolute nonsense, just treat it as a fun game. They aren't demanding blind, dogmatic faith.
Which is a brilliant psychological approach. Whether you believe this as literal factual reincarnation or you treat it purely as a metaphorical framework for self-discovery, the outcome is highly beneficial.
You learn something either way.
Right. Viewing your deepest traits as a coordinate point forces a level of profound, objective self-reflection that most people never achieve. It asks you to sit down, look honestly at your unexplainable anxieties, your prejudices, and your desires, and figure out where you actually stand.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? We started this deep dive by talking about that crowded subway car, looking around at all those alien faces. This text suggests that everyone around you is fighting a complex battle dictated by an invisible, holographic history.
It grants a certain grace to the chaos of human interaction.
It really does. But it also means that your current life, right here, right now, is just one temporary stop in an endless journey.
You are currently occupying the human coordinate. The choices you make and the instincts you choose to indulge or overcome are actively writing the code for whatever comes next.
Which brings us to the final, fascinating line of the source material. At the very end, the author points the reader to a follow-up article titled, How to Predict Your Own Afterlife.
That is a title that really makes you pause.
And that is the thought we want to leave you with today to mull over on your own. If your current fears, your diets, your career desires, and your relationship patterns are simply the echoing footprints of your past lives, what do your actions today say about the world you are building for your next reincarnation?
Are you actively untethering yourself to head back to the thousand-year world? Or are your daily habits digging your heels deeper into the tenement yard?
Exactly. Next time you are in that crowded line at the cafe, take a long look at the person next to you. And then take an even longer look at yourself. Until next time.